Should I start sharing?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our 10th series of Learning and Mending, Understories. In this series, we will be exploring ecologies of storytelling through speculative fiction. An understory is an underlying layer of vegetation beneath a forest canopy. In this series, we will be thinking about the complex, vital stories that lie below and the subplots that nurture life in the shadows. Speculative fiction is a broad term that encompasses several different genres, from hard science fiction and fantasy to myth-making and folklore. The underlying characteristic of SF is that it speculates. It asks, what if? SF plays with what is and imagines what could be. Understories does not ponder possibilities that lie in some distant future, but imagines new ways of being present. We will investigate what speculative fiction is, how it disrupts time and challenges anthropocentric visions of life, and the transformative potential it offers. In this series, our embroidery collection features a new design by Vanetta Renler. If you would like one of these or another patterns we have to offer, please send us your mailing address at info@metabolicstudio.org. Tonight, we will share our screen displaying this week's reading. Feel free to jump in and read aloud from the text as you feel inspired, as we welcome everyone to listen and to give voice to the text we share each week. And before I pass this over to Izzy to give an explanation of tonight's reading, I just wanted to share with you an embroidery of the week that we got returned actually this week. It's done by Trish Mulvey, and it is a beautiful yellow rumped warbler and manzanita, which is a bird that has been seen on the Metabolic Studio site that we call the Moon. And it's just, this is so lovely and charming. I just thought I'd share this one for this week. So now I will pass it over to Izzy.
Thank you, Jen. Welcome, everyone. It's so nice to see old faces and new faces, and I'm so excited that we can all be here tonight together. So tonight is the first week in the series, and tonight we're not reading fiction, but we're setting the foundation for the types of fiction we will be reading. So tonight we will be reading, and as Jen mentioned, Understories. Just to put in context more of what this series is about, we're not pondering like possibilities that lie in a distant future, but more so the present. So we're imagining new ways of being present with each other. So we're going to think about what speculative fiction is, how it interrupts and disrupts time in a linear way and challenges anthropocentric visions of life and has transformative potential. So tonight we're not reading fiction, we're reading texts that set the foundation, particularly Ursula K. Le Guin's The Carrier Bag Theory of Fiction. And this is a text in which Le Guin presents an arc of storytelling in fiction that undermines the patriarchal and anthropocentric model of human evolution. So in the 1970s, the term carrier bag theory of human evolution was used by anthropologist Elizabeth Fisher in her research on early human development. And Fisher suggested that early humans' primary tool or cultural device was not a knife or a spear or a club, but rather the container in which you would carry food from foraging to the home. And Le Guin, a decade later, borrowed this term to talk about fiction. So that's what we'll be reading tonight, as well as a short poem by Timothy Morton called Beginning After the End, which is kind of an incantation of time travel. It makes us think about time and what it means to be present and what the future means, as well as an excerpt from Franco Bifo Berardi called The Future After the End of Economy, which emphasizes capitalism's role in thinking about time in a linear model. And so these texts might not seem like they obviously group together, but I put them together because they all challenge linear perceptions of time that orient everything towards future. So there's incredible potential in the presence of being, and linear orientation is actually anti-life insofar as it's rooted in the logic of oppression. So to rebel against linearity and futurity is to open up new possibilities and kind of rebel a little bit against capitalism, which, so every story has temporal underpinnings, and that's important. So speculative fiction particularly is known to engage with an idea or an imagining of the future, which is why this week I really want us to talk about what the future is. But SF is also known to undermine reality and embrace a kind of strange realism, sometimes one that like plays tricks on the real world and feels magical. So today we'll be reading about fiction and stories that lie more in the shadows and in the twists of life, and without particular resolution, but an ability to resist and adapt and continue. So thank you for being here. I'm excited to read with you all. And now I will pass it to Matt for the screen share of the text. And yeah, feel free to jump in and get started.
For those of you who haven't been before, we take it in turns to read. So we read as much as you feel like reading, and then when you want to stop, stop, and then whoever wants to jump in, jump in. The Carrier Bag Theory of Fiction by Ursula K. Le Guin, 1986. In the temperate and tropical regions where it appears the hominids evolved into human beings, the principal food of the species was vegetable. 65 to 80% of what human beings ate in those regions in Paleolithic, Neolithic, and prehistoric times was gathered. Only in the extreme Arctic was meat the staple food. The mammoth hunters spectacularly occupy the cave wall and the mind. And what we actually did to stay alive and fat was gather seeds, roots, sprouts, shoots, leaves, nuts, berries, fruits, and grains, adding bugs and mollusks and netting, or snaring birds, fish, rats, rabbits, and other tuskless small fry to up the protein. And we didn't even work hard at it, much less hard than peasants slaving in somebody else's field after agriculture was invented, much less hard than paid workers since civilization was invented. The average prehistoric person could make a nice living in about 15-hour work week. 15 hours a week for subsistence leaves a lot of time for other things. So much time that maybe the restless ones who didn't have a baby around to enliven their life, or skill in making or cooking or singing, or very interesting thoughts to think, decided to slope off and hunt mammoths. The skillful hunters would come staggering back with a load of meat, a lot of ivory, and a story. It wasn't the meat that made the difference, it was the story. It's hard to tell a really gripping tale of how I wrestled a wild oat seed from its husk, and then another, and then another, and then another, and then another, and then I scratched my gnat bites and said something funny. And we went to the creek and got a drink and watched newts for a while, and then I found another patch of oats. No, it does not compare. It cannot compete with how I thrust my spear deep into the titanic hairy flank while impaled on one huge sweeping tusk, writhed screaming, and blood sprouted everywhere in crimson torrents, and Boob was crushed to jelly when the mammoth fell on him as I shot my unerring arrow straight through eye to brain. That story not only has action, it has a hero. Heroes are powerful, and before you know it, the men and women in the wild oat patch and their kids and the skills of makers and the thoughts of the thoughtful and the songs of the singers are all part of it, have all been pressed into service in the tale of the hero. But it isn't their story, it's his. When she was planning the book that ended up as The Three Guineas, Virginia Woolf wrote a heading in her notebook, quote, glossary. She had thought of reinventing English according to her new plan in order to tell a different story. One of the entries in this glossary is heroism, defined as botulism, and hero in Woolf's dictionary is bottle. The hero as bottle, a stringent reevaluation. I now propose the bottle as hero, not just the bottle of gin or wine, but bottle in its older sense of container in general, a thing that holds something else. If you haven't got something to put it in, food will escape you. Even something as uncombative and unresourceful as an oat. You put as many as you can into your stomach, and while they're handy, that being the primary container, but what about tomorrow morning when you wake up and it's cold and rainy and wouldn't it be good to have just a few handfuls of oats to chew on and give little to make her shut up? But how do you get more than one stomachful and one handful home? So you get up and go to the damn soggy oat patch in the rain. And wouldn't it be a good thing if you had something to put baby in so that you could pick the oats with both hands? a leaf, a gourd shell, a net, a bag, a sling, a sack, a bottle, a pot, a box, a container, a holder, a recipient?
The first cultural device was probably a recipient. Many theorizers feel that the earliest cultural inventions must have been a container to hold gathered products and some kind of sling or net carrier. So says Elizabeth Fisher in Women's Creation, McGraw-Hill 75. But no, this cannot be. Where is the wonderful, big, long, hard thing, a bone, I believe, that the ape man first bashed somebody in the movie, and then, grunting with ecstasy at having achieved the first proper murder, flung up into the sky. And whirling there, it became a spaceship thrusting its way into the cosmos to fertilize it and produce at the end of the movie a lovely fetus, a boy, of course, drifting around the Milky Way without, oddly enough, any womb, any matrix at all. I don't know. I don't even care. I'm not telling that story. We've heard it. We've all heard about all the sticks and spears and swords, the things to bash and poke and hit with, the long, hard things. But we have not heard about the thing to put things in, the container for the thing contained. That is a new story. That is news. And yet old. Before, once you think about it, surely long before the weapon, a late, luxurious, superfluous tool, long before the useful knife and axe, right along with the indispensable whacker, grinder, and digger. For what's the use of digging up a lot of potatoes if you have nothing to lug the ones you can't eat home in? With or before the tool that forces energy inward, we made the tool that brings energy home. It makes sense to me. I'm an adherent of what Fisher calls the carrier bag theory of human evolution.
This theory not only explains large areas of theoretical obscurity and avoids large areas of theoretical nonsense inhabited largely by tigers, foxes, and other highly territorial mammals, it also grounds me personally in human culture in a way I never felt grounded before. So long as culture was explained as originating from an elaborating upon the use of long, hard objects for sticking, bashing, and killing, I never thought that I had or wanted any particular share in it. What Freud mistook for her lack of civilization is women's lack of loyalty to civilization, Lillian Smith observed. The society, the civilization they were talking about, these theoreticians, was eventually theirs. They owned it, they liked it. They were human, fully human, bashing, sticking, thrusting, killing. Wanting to be human too, I sought for evidence that I was. But if that's what it took to make a weapon and kill with it, then evidently I was either extremely defective as a human being or not human at all. That's right, they said. What you are is a woman, possibly not human at all, certainly defective. Now be quiet while we go on telling the story of the ascent of man, the hero. Go on, I say, wandering off toward the wild oats with oh in the sling and little carrying the basket. You just go on telling how the mammoth fell on Boob and how Cain fell on Abel and how the bomb fell on Nagasaki and how the burning jelly fell on the villagers and how the missiles will fall on the evil empire and all the other steps in the ascent of man.
If it is a human thing to do, to put something you want because it's useful, edible, or beautiful into a bag or a basket or a bit of rolled bark or leaf or a net woven of your own hair or what have you, and then take it home with you, home being another larger kind of pouch or bag, a container for people. And then later on, you take it out and eat it or share it or store it up for winter in a solider container or put it in the medicine bundle or the shrine or the museum, the holy place, the area that contains what is sacred. And then next day, you probably do much the same again. If to do that is human, if that's what it takes, then I am a human being after all, fully freely, gladly, for the first time. Not, let it be said at once, an unaggressive or uncombative human being. I am an aging, angry woman, laying mightily about me with my handbag, fighting hoodlums off. However, I don't, nor does anybody else, consider myself heroic for doing so. It's just one of those damned things you have to do in order to be able to go on gathering wild oats and telling stories. It is the story that makes the difference. It is the story that hid my humanity from me, the story the mammoth hunters told about bashing, thrusting, raping, killing, about the hero. The wonderful poisonous story of botulism, the killer story. It seems that the story is approaching its end, lest there be no more telling of stories at all. Some of us out here in the wild oats, amid the alien corn, think we'd better start telling another one, which maybe people can go on with when the old one's finished. Maybe. The trouble is, we've all let ourselves become part of the killer story, and so we may get finished along with it. Hence, it is with a certain feeling of urgency that I seek the nature, subject, words of the other story, the untold one, the life story. It's unfamiliar, it doesn't come easily, thoughtlessly to the lips as the killer story does, but still, quote, untold, unquote, was an exaggeration. People have been telling the life story for ages in all sorts of words and ways, myths of creation and transformation, trickster stories, folk tales, jokes, novels.
The novel, oh, sorry.
The novel, no, you go ahead.
Okay. The novel is a fundamentally unheroic kind of story. Of course, the hero has frequently taken it over, that being his imperial nature and uncontrollable impulse to take everything over and run it while making stern decrees and laws to control his uncontrollable impulse to kill it. So the hero has decreed, through his mouthpiece, the lawgivers first, that the proper shape of the narrative is that of the arrow or sphere, starting here and going there and thunk, hitting its mark, which drops dead. Second, that the central concern of narrative, including the novel, is conflict. And third, that the story isn't any good if he isn't in it. I defer with all of this. I would go as far as to say that the natural, proper, fitting shape of the novel might be that of a sack, a bag. A book holds words. Words hold things. They bear meanings. A novel is a medicine bundle, holding things in a particular powerful relation to one another and to us. One relationship among elements in the novel may well be that of conflict, but the reduction of narrative to conflict is absurd. I have read a how to write manual that says a story should be seen as a battle, and went on about strategies, attacks, victory, etc., conflict, competition, stress, struggle, etc. Within the narrative, conceived as carrier, bag, belly, box, house, medicine bundle, may be seen as necessary elements of a whole, which itself cannot be categorized either as conflict or as harmony, since its purpose is neither resolution nor status, but continuing process.
Finally, it's clear that the hero does not look well in this bag. He needs a stage or a pedestal or a pinnacle. You put him in a bag and he looks like a rabbit, like a potato. That is why I like novels. Instead of heroes, they have people in them. So when I came to write science fiction novels, I came lugging this great heavy sack of stuff, my carrier bag, full of wimps and klutzes and tiny grains of things smaller than a mustard seed, and intricately woven nets, which, when laboriously unknotted, are seen to contain one blue pebble, an imperturbably functioning chronometer telling the time on another world, and a mouse's skull, full of beginnings without ends, of initiations, of losses, of transformations and translations, and far more tricks than conflicts, far fewer triumphs than snares and delusions, full of spaceships that get stuck, missions that fail, and people who don't understand. I said it was hard to make a gripping tale of how we wrested the wild oats from their husks. I didn't say it was impossible. Whoever said writing a novel was easy? If science fiction is the mythology of modern technology, then its myth is tragic. Technology, or modern science, using the words as they are usually used in an unexamined shorthand standing for the quote unquote hard sciences and high technology founded upon continuous economic growth, is a heroic undertaking. Herculean, Promethean, conceived as triumph, hence ultimately as tragedy. The fiction embodying this myth will be, and has been, triumphant. Man conquers Earth, space, aliens, death, the future, etc. And tragic. Apocalypse, Holocaust, then or now. If, however, one avoids the linear, progressive, time-killing arrow mode of the techno-heroic and redefines technology and science as primarily cultural carrier bag rather than weapon of domination, one pleasant side effect is that science fiction can be seen as a far less rigid, narrow field, not necessarily Promethean or apocalyptic at all, and in fact, less a mythological genre than a realistic one.
It is a strange realism, but it is a strange reality. Science fiction, properly conceived, like all serious fiction, however funny, is a way of trying to describe what is in fact going on, what people actually do and feel, how people relate to everything else in this vast stack, this belly of the universe, this womb of things to be and tomb of things that were, this unending story. In it, as in all fiction, there is room enough to keep even man where he belongs, in his place in the scheme of things. There is time enough to gather plenty of wild oats and sow them too, and sing to little and listen to little ools joke and watch newts. And still the story isn't over. Still there are seeds to be gathered and room in the bag of stars.
That's the end of that one.
Whoop, what?
Oh, that's just the end of that one.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we have two more short poems coming, or an excerpt in a short poem. And Matt, would you mind going full screen on that? Is that possible? Maybe. I think you'd have to download it. It's okay. I think we can see it. And just for context, I realized I didn't say who Ursula K. Le Guin is. She's my favorite sci-fi writer. She passed away, but her stories were always really incredible. The Dispossessed, the story about this man who comes from an anarchist planet. He's a scientist and he goes to a planet that's called Terrace, and it's based off Earth, and it's a planet that's rooted in capitalism, and that is a great story. And then another one called The Left Hand of Darkness is another favorite of mine, which is about a person who travels from Earth to another planet, in this planet that he travels to, no one there has prescribed genders. They're asexual, and like they don't have any type of, or they don't have sexes. So gender is not really a concept, but their sex develops as they're about to have intercourse with someone. It just kind of organically decides what type of genitalia one will have. The body just decides, and then it can change from time to time. And this was written, I believe Left Hand of Darkness was written in the 70s. I could be wrong though. I'll double check on that, but those are just two of her novels that I always recommend first. And yeah, I can also put those in the chat. But just to give context, sorry, I forgot to say who she is. And Franco Bifo Berardi is an Italian communist who was involved in the Autonomia movement in Italy. And he writes a lot about economy and capitalism. And we've read some of his stuff in Learning and Mending before, particularly Breathing on Chaos and Poetry, if anyone remembers that. So sorry for interrupting. I'll just get started. Franco Bifo Berardi, The Future After the End of Economy. Only if we are able to disentangle the future, the perception of the future, the concept of the future, and the very production of the future from the traps of growth and investment, will we find a way out of the vicious subjugation of life, wealth, and pleasure to the financial abstraction of semio-capital. The key to this disentanglement can be found in a new form of wisdom, harmonizing with exhaustion.
Exhaustion is a cursed word in the frame of modern culture, which is based on the cult of energy and the cult of male aggressiveness. But energy is fading in the postmodern world for so many reasons that are easy to detect. Demographic trends reveal that as life expectancy increases and birth rate decreases, mankind as a whole is growing old. This process of general aging produces a sense of exhaustion, and what was once considered a blessing, increased life expectancy, may become a misfortune if the myth of energy is not restrained and replaced with a myth of solidarity and compassion.
Energy is fading also because basic physical resources, such as oil, are doomed to extinction or dramatic depletion. And energy is fading because competition is stupid in the age of the general intellect. The general intellect is not based on juvenile impulse and male aggressiveness, on fighting, winning, and appropriation. It is based on cooperation and sharing. This is why the future is over. We are living in a space that is beyond the future. If we come to terms with this post-futuristic condition, we can renounce accumulation and growth and be happy sharing the wealth that comes from past industrial labor and present collective intelligence. If we cannot do this, we are doomed to live in a century of violence, misery, and war.
And I'm going to ask that we read this one twice, because with poetry, I think it's always great, or even 3 times, just because we're doing pretty good on time. And it's nice to just kind of, every time you read it, you hear something new, I think. So. Timothy.
Oh.
You can go.
Okay. Timothy Morton, Beginning After the End, 2016. There are thoughts we can anticipate, glimpsed into the distance along existing through pathways. This is a future that is simply the present stretched out further. There is not yet that never arrives. Yet here we are thinking it in the paradoxical flicker of this very sentence.
If we want thought different from the present, if we want to change the present, then thought must be aware of this kind of future. It is not a future into which we can progress. This future is unthinkable, yet we are thinking it. Coexisting, we are thinking future coexistence, predicting it and more, keeping the unpredictable one open. Yet such a future, the open future, has become taboo.
Because it is
Because,
real,
oh, go ahead.
because it is real, yet beyond concept, because it is weird. Art is thought from the future, thought we cannot explicitly think at present, thought we may not think or speak at all. If we want thought different from the present, then thought must veer toward art. To be a thing at all, a rock, a lizard, a human, is to be in a twist. How thought longs to twist and turn like the serpent poetry. Or is art veering toward thought? Does it ever arrive? The threads of fate have tied our tongues. Tongue twisters incline towards nonsense. Logic includes nonsense as long as it can tell the truth. The logic of nonsense. The needle skipped the groove of the present. Into the dark forest you have already turned. I take present to mean for the last 12,000 years, a butterfly kiss of geological time.
There are
There,
thoughts, oops, excuse me, go ahead, Izzy.
oh, it's okay. You can go ahead.
There are thoughts we can anticipate, glimpsed in the distance along existing thought pathways. This is a future that is simply the present, stretched out further. There is not yet thought that never arrives. Yet here we are thinking it in there is not yet thought that never arrives, yet here we are thinking it in the paradoxical flicker of this very sentence. If we want thought different from the present, if we want to change the present, then thought must be aware of this kind of future. It is not a future into which we can progress. This future is unthinkable, yet we are thinking it. Coexisting, we are thinking future coexistence, predicting it and more, keeping the unpredictable one open. Yet such a future, the open future, has become taboo.
Because it is real, yet beyond concept, because it is weird. Art is thought from the future, thought we cannot explicitly think at present, thought we may not think or speak at all. If we want thought different from the present, then thought must veer toward toward art. To be a thing at all, a rock, a lizard, a human, is to be in a twist. How thoughts longs to twist and turn like the serpent poetry. Or is art veering toward thought? Does it ever arrive? The threads of fate have tied our tongues. Tongue twisters incline towards nonsense. Logic includes nonsense as long as it can tell the truth. The logic of nonsense. The needle skipped the groove of the present. Into this dark forest you have already turned. I take present to mean for the last 12,000 years. A butterfly kiss of geological time.
Great, thank you. I think reading it twice was great, and I will put the poem in the thread so that people can look at it. And to answer the question in the thread, two of the things are from this Whitechapel science fiction book, which I will also put in the thread. And then the Ursula Le Guin one is not in that collection. But before we break out into discussion, I just want to wrap it up. So Le Guin is pushing back against kind of the binary against life story and killing story inherent to certain classically gendered qualities. So carrier bag as womb and the weapon hero as phallus. And they both envelop one another. So what she's saying is there's no like conflict resolution, because that would imply some type of linearity, but rather a perpetual motion, conflict, competition, stress, struggle, etc. within the narrative conceived as carrier bag, belly, box, house, medicine bundle, may be seen as necessary elements of a whole. So yeah, again, neither conflict or harmony, but rather, and neither resolution nor stasis, but a continuity that moves and flows. And this idea of continuity without resolution is one of the most important elements of the carrier bag theory. So imagining life stories as linear conflicts, because it's rooted in capitalism and Western imperial thought, it's not actually, it's super limited. It's not really going to get us anywhere interesting. In the bigger picture of life stories, there are no fixed beginnings or end, but rather an ongoingness that she kind of alludes to. And the sentiment is repeated in Bifo's text, The Future After the End of Economy, where he's challenging futurity and accumulation and growth in favor of embracing exhaustion and cooperation and sharing, which exhaustion typically is something where it's like, oh, I'm so tired, from work. And it's like, okay, well, what if we just all relax with each other and we just, enjoy and share, and we don't think constantly about accumulation or growth, but just like he's saying, harmonizing with exhaustion. And then Morton was talking about the future that lies in the present, but is stretched out further. So this kind of future is one that opens up possibilities and twists and turns. So some of the questions that I wrote up for tonight are, how do we disentangle our stories from the concept of future rooted in capitalism, progress, and linearity? What kinds of stories evoke transformation in the present as opposed to imagining change in the distant future? And what is in your carrier bag? So I will also put those questions in the thread, and we'll go into breakout rooms and discuss for a bit and then come back and share. And feel free to, in the breakout room, just introduce yourself, where you're calling from, what your pronouns are, or before we discuss in the group, feel free to do that as well, if you would like. So yeah, I believe Jen and Cindy will make those breakout rooms now. And
Yep.
Also, we'll be in the breakout rooms for about 10 minutes, and that's to facilitate the largeness of the group. And then we'll come back together for a general discussion afterwards. So this is just also a way to introduce yourselves to people and get the juices flowing on this very juicy material that Izzy's selected for us.
Okay, I will send you to the breakout rooms now.
Be visible to us now?
The message should pop up, and then you just hit accept and it'll send you to that room, and then I'll end it, and then you'll all come back to this room. Has anyone not been assigned? I just want to make sure. Okay, Lee, I will add you right now.
Well, we had a wonderful breakout room. These things are always too short though. These breakout rooms. Yeva, do you want to pick up where you were leaving off on a group level, or does that put you on a giant spot?
It kind of puts me on the spot, but yeah, I think I was just mainly going to say that there's a lot to think about here and a lot to unpack, and I have to think about it some more. I feel a little bit on the spot to say it in front of everybody, but sorry.
No
Yeah.
worries.
Okay.
I don't mind speaking a little bit. Is that cool?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Jasmine.
Yeah. I was just thinking, just even when we were reading, I wrote down this little note that's like about the story as a medicine bundle. And I've been making those recently. And I think what makes that feel so powerful to me is this idea of something that dries and burns. You know, the story comes to you fresh and then it drives in the body and then you burn it to the spirits as you continue to retell it. And so I think that I was just thinking with that metaphor a little bit further.
Sorry, that was like a poem. I need you to say it one more time because I'm getting the visual image. Can you say it one more time?
I was thinking about that metaphor of as a story as a medicine bundle and about like how it dries in the body and then it burns with how we tell it and then it goes, the smoke is like goes to the spirit. And like when you even think about the medicine bundle, it's holding those spirits that are like in the plant and stuff like that, just burning as we keep telling it and the smoke never really disappearing. It just gets contained in another form. I just love that metaphor and I wanted to share what I was thinking with it.
That's beautiful.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. This is Jupong Lin. I'm new to this space, and but I feel really compelled to follow up Jasmine's comment. And so first, I need to just be really honest and say it's the end of a very long day. I'm calling in from the East Coast, Nipmuc territory, and so I'm irritable. I mean, you know, my just that's the footnote. It's like my life circumstances right now are difficult. I'm caring for elderly parents and an elderly dog, and you know, I'm doing this from my bed, and but I'm trying to be really present to what is here, which I don't really even know what is going on here. I was sent information about this from a friend of mine, and so I came in kind of, you know, not really knowing what this is, but I feel that there's something here that really resonates with my work, which is about interspecies justice, transformative justice. I'm an artist and a poet, and I am dedicating my life to this work and to decolonization and reparations, restoring land to indigenous people, to the first peoples who stewarded the land. And so I will be honest that I was a little, I don't know, impatient and going into this, but I'm glad to be here. Something sent me here, something brought me here, and I really appreciated what Jasmine just said. I'm trying not to be a total downer, but at the same time, I feel like often I find that is my role, to not be a total downer, but to be the voice of, you know, the annoying tea boy. You know, I'm the daughter of people who survived Taiwanese occupation by Japan and didn't know anything about it until I was, you know, much later in my life. So like the whole, you know, the story of colonization that's been a lifelong inquiry and fascination, and it's not just about how colonization impacts humans, but how it impacts the other living beings, the ecosystems where colonization has happened, which is of course everywhere. So I want to bring that into the conversation. I'm always thinking about, you know, all the critters, all the worms and the birds and the insects and the, you know, and the more you know, exciting looking mammals and, you know, all the other critters that are affected by human to human conflict and occupation. And I think I'm just trying to give voice to a lot of what I think was already in the text that were read earlier, but I always feel like, yeah, I'm just like the annoying one who has to say, but we're not actually speaking, you know, those other beings. You know, I'm not good with being abstract about these ideas, but like, you know, when we throw our bombs on a place, we are obliterating whole entire webs of life. And who are all those beings that humans have whose lives we've disrupted? So, okay, that's my little irritating message for the day. Thank you.
So next week we're reading a text that's actually each week has a different theme, but next week we're reading a text that's about the relationship between ants and acacia seeds. And it's about ants leaving these kind of fun, revolutionary messages in acacia seeds. And it's a sci-fi story, and this therolinguistic person's trying to decode it. And it's really fun. And we're reading that along with a text that talks about the actual relationships between ants and acacia seeds. So I hear what you're saying. Non-human protagonist is very important to me, as well as the series, I think, and that will become abundant as we actually read fiction pieces. And I appreciate you like bringing that up. Before we wrap up tonight, I can give some little tidbits for each. I have a theme for each week set in place that I can share, but next week will actually be all about non-human relations. So yeah, you're in the right place for that.
In our breakout group, there were a few people who work as writers in some capacity, and it sounds like several of us have tried to approach that question of, is it possible to tell a story without conflict, and what kinds of stories are frictionless, and obviously it's possible, but then you get sort of sequestered into, you know, you're swept into a group of like, either you're making abstract literature or maybe you're making an art house film or something, and it tests people's patience or whatever that means. And because people respond to sensationalism, and a lot of that comes from violence and conflict. But obviously, perhaps there are other ways of imagining conflict. So it's not just, you know, man versus man, man versus woman, woman versus woman. You can have, you know, human versus environment, or human versus self. And the idea of a hero is also could be perhaps abstractly framed as a carrier bag, because there are, I think, ways in which heroes serve the purpose of bringing an idea to a lot of people and allows people to rally behind a person. And one thing that came to mind was something I read in Braiding Sweetgrass, where in the first, I think one of the first chapters, where she's discussing the differences in origin stories for humanity, where you have the biblical version where once cast from the Garden of Eden, you have humanity sort of fighting up against nature and being like, oh, yes, parallel mothers, yeah, like, so, you know, Eve and Adam are like trying to subdue nature to serve their needs and to survive, whereas in the indigenous tale of the Sky Woman, you have this ethereal being coming from the sky and landing on a water planet, and then working alongside the creatures there, or the creatures on Earth help her create land on which she can then become the steward of a garden and starts planting food with the seed that she falls down from Earth or from the sky from. So she's a hero as well in a way, and there's perhaps ways of telling these heroic stories that are just more realistic about what the consequences of violence are versus being perhaps more like a hero in terms of a steward of land.
Yeah. Or even I think pushing away from maybe the concepts of like, okay, conflict is actually a good thing. I think conflict is something that like can generate adaptation and can allow for permeability and mutability. It's something that like, but so conflict doesn't have to be negative, and when it's not negative, it's not thought as something of like this war, this violent struggle, but rather just struggle as a part of life and a part of existence. And also that the hero, I think if we're thinking about things in a story arc of like, there's this bad stuff going on and the hero comes in and saves it, like, yeah, that concept is one rooted in almost more hierarchy, where if we think of struggle and conflict as something that just is embodied throughout existence, you know, there can be a kind of non-hierarchical way of like there being a protagonist. Like, how can the protagonist actually be? I think that's what I liked about Ursula Le Guin getting at with the wimp and the klutz, that the hero doesn't have to be this leader or a god or a master or someone who, you know, the hero, the protagonist can instead be someone who is able to tap into something or reveal something to the reader or help, you know, move the story in a way that really gets into the goop of life, if that makes sense.
It does. I mean, what story really needs is tension more than conflict, you know? That's something that's talked a lot about in making story, is a tension that keeps it tight and moving. So
I wonder too if it's
mhm.
if it's less about eradicating conflict or choosing between conflict or tension or however we want to frame that. And I think what I sort of appreciate about how Izzy formulated their question, and also really what Le Guin is enacting, I think is kind of a yes and mentality, where she's saying, you know, it's not as, you know, sure, a story can include conflict, but I think maybe the thing that I'm focusing it on is that the story isn't about conflict. It's maybe about the relationality of what conflict does to people, or what failures do, or
I wanted to talk about when we talk about the hero's journey, when I relate to it, I really don't relate to the one of Joseph Campbell, but mostly the derivative forms that other people have taken since he has passed on. I'd say that Joseph Campbell was pioneer in it. I only wish that people, after he passed on, there were people from other cultures and other worlds that continued the story. I had a very personal experience with this several years ago when I was at a screenwriting convention in England, in London. And I spent a whole lot of extra money to take a hero's journey workshop with Christopher Vogler. And I was severely disillusioned because at that time I was the only person of color in the room. and it was a huge audience. And every time I raised my hand, he would outwardly ignore me, just like you got ignored like a kid at school. And in that, I mean, it left me feeling so alienated. And then later on, as I do with a lot of these things, I send personal thank you notes to presenters and everything else. And I sent a thank you note to him and never heard, but everyone who was the busiest writers of all, they always, if it was even through their secretaries, they would respond to my thing. He responded nothing. So out of that, I got where the hero's journey has turned into another kind of capitalistic tool to sell. Really. It has nothing to do with exploring our own personal journeys, because I don't hear our stories, any of our stories on there. I don't, I hear none. I just hear what is somebody's idea of a concept of a hero, and it just isn't jiving. So I welcome this group because I have been searching for people who would look beyond the razzmatazz of so-called famous people and whatever, and really get down to the nitty-gritty of how these concepts are not helping, but mostly harming us. And it's on us to kind of push back and say, no, that's not my story. It's not our story, but here's our story. And hopefully, we can get our stories heard.
I love what you just said, and I'm so sorry you had that experience. And I have never met Christopher Vogler, but I'd read his book back in the day, and you know, what I shared in the breakout was essentially how I personally have found that model to be so oppressive, as someone, the hero's journey construct and model such as it is, to be so oppressive. The example I gave was I'm someone I've had cancer 3 times, and I turned that into, I became an advocate, without planning to, but I ended up telling my story everywhere, and began to understand that the expectation for the patient story is that it has a positive resolution, that, and that you are effectively this hero who goes on this journey, and you're going to bring your wisdom back to the community. And the fact of the matter is that's BS. It's like, maybe some people come through that and are great or whatever, but in general, it's an incredibly oppressive construct. And the expectation is that one would adhere to it. And therefore, how do you find ways to subvert it? And the book that I put in the chat, People Craft in the Real World by Matthew, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Solis, I think, is a must read for an expansion of the idea of, how do we come at narrative that is not from a Western hegemonic perspective. I put the link in the chat. But anyway, thank you. I too have been looking for, this kind of a group of people. And I recognize Lee Adams somewhere there. Hi, Lee. It's Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm sorry. I have spoken before, so I will defer to whoever's on deck, but I'm also eager to speak. So who's next? I'm happy to speak.
Yes, go ahead, Shipong. We'd love to hear from you.
Okay. To the person who just spoke recently, Shakura, I think it was. Thank you so much. I really appreciate what you had to say. I'm just, I'm someone I'm an immigrant to the US, and a nature lover, tree hugger all my life, and also aware all my life of the coloniality of the environmental movement in the US. And so I just really always appreciate and I want to uplift the voices of BIPOC people in the movement, and to recognize that the environmentalist movement in the US has always been really white supremacist and colonial. And that's one of the things I think we really need to work against. Not to say that everybody here is, but like that is a big shadow that we have to address. I think that there's a big counter movement underway. I feel that it's mostly in the realm of Black Indigenous and people of color working for land sovereignty, specifically in terms of farming and food sovereignty. And that's my experience is, those are the people that I'm in dialogue with, that I really want to bring into these kinds of conversations. And I'm often, I struggle with how the movements for eco-social justice, and I pause between each of those because our current capitalist, anthropocentric way of understanding that movement, the environmental movement, separates the interests of humans from the interests of other than humans, and it separates the interests of different races of humans. And so I want to introduce that element into this conversation, but the ways that we are racialized and that we are racialized against each other. As an Asian person in the US, I bet a lot of you don't know that it wasn't too long ago that an Asian woman was stabbed in the head multiple times, very recently, and it was an Asian hate crime. This is not something of the past. And it's also not something that's disconnected from environmentalism. For me and for, Asian, indigenous, BIPOC people, concerns about the land, concerns about land justice are not separate from concerns of human justice, identity justice, justice in terms of each of our different identities. And so I don't really like to separate the concerns of indigenous sovereignty, for example, from Asian hate crimes. I know that that's what happens in the news, that our issues get separated. But for me, they're not separate. For me, they're the same. They're connected. And I believe it's the work of organizations like this one, groups and collectives like this one, to keep bringing it back to connecting. The hate crime against that woman who had her head stabbed last week is the same. It's connected to Standing Rock. It's connected to blockades against extractive industries and oil extraction on indigenous land. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so we will be also reading in the vein of, anti-colonialism, because we're running low on time, I'll just kind of give a summary because you keep mentioning like non-human, more than human, you know, colonialism, and all these things are themes that we will touch on to show how these struggles are all interconnected, which I think is the importance of not saying, no, stories don't have conflict, but there's constant struggle that develops as the future unfolds. And how that struggle unfolds is what determines the present and the future. And so there's this kind of continuity in the types of fiction we will be reading. And our last week actually we'll be reading about about colonialism and how actually when we think about future, there's always, you know, this idea of, okay, what happens when our Earth falls apart? We go to outer space, we go to different planets, we colonize space. And so we'll actually be reading a text about the idea to abolish outer space, because actually going to outer space is just a continuation of colonialism. And we'll be reading another fun sci-fi piece with that. So kind of wrapping those things together, colonialism and the concept of the future. That's what we'll be reading the last week of the series in 6 weeks from now. Before that, we'll be reading a bit, we'll be watching a short clip from Space is the Place, a film by Sun Ra, and then reading another short story by Ursula Guin that is about kind of sound as play, describing a place through sound. So we'll be thinking about sound as embodiment of place. And Sun Ra was an Afrofuturist artist, a musician, jazz composer. And so we'll be touching on Afrofuturism. And then the week before that, we'll be reading about dreams. So a text called Deer Dancer by an Indigenous author, Kathleen Elkelka, and a poem or short piece of prose called Coral Tree by writer Jackie Wang, and a poem by Joy Harjo, A Post-Colonial Tale. The week before that, we will be reading what I call The Voice of Collapse, which will be reading Speech Sounds by Octavia Butler. And then the week before that, we will be reading The Unproductive Body, To Ecological Fancy, or that's what the week I call that Unproductive Body, but we'll be reading To Ecological Fancies, a text called From the Cyborg Manifesto, and a poem that thinks about the body. So we're kind of moving through it in a way where each week the themes are they're different, but they all tie together and show how all these stories are connected, just speaking to what Jupong was saying. But yeah, we have a couple more minutes, so I'm going to open the floor back up so that we can talk more about fiction, storytelling, and kind of if people have last thoughts, maybe people that haven't spoken yet, perhaps a really burning thing to say.
Oh, I have something to say. Aloha winola, e kako, aloha mai kako. My name's Moxie Alvarez. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I'm Kanaka Maoli. And I'm also a sociologist. So I know there's a lot of like writers in the room, but I'm a sociologist whose specialty is in radical ecological justice movements, indigenous rights, like DA stuff. Which is why I'm really, really excited that like we have like this container, right? We have this vessel of like literature. I'm really like stoked for all the things we're gonna be reading. And like I think that actually like as like an indigenous person who like does ecological work all the time, that like we're really set up good like on this like starting themes, right? That like I really feel like Le Guin is bringing us to a place where the novel fiction itself is the container for all our like possible realities, right? And that the culmination like that like while sci-fi looks to the future, that like let's not really be trapped, right? That sci-fi is then this like space where all of our nows are happening. So when we look at the Morton piece, right, that we are always already right now, that like the future is like what we are now doing here, and like that there is like space for all of the possible realities, and that we are making them now. So we don't need to be wed to like one way of doing things, because in this like space of fiction and the space of imagination, like we can really like take the time to relax in our possibilities and our capabilities of right now, like with each other. And so I'm really stoked. I know that we don't have a ton of time, but I just want to say that I'm like really excited, and I'm like really like looking forward to like going through these readings and like having this space specifically for like imaginative struggle, right? And I don't see imagination as like a purely abstract thing. I see it, right? So like let's like we're disaggregating ourselves from like time, for colonial time, so we can also disaggregate ourselves from this idea that imagination is abstract, that in fact our imagination is in like constant like flow and interchange with our material realities. So I'm super stoked. I'm sure we'll have more. I know we're short on time, but it's nice to meet you all. I'm really excited. Pass.
So beautiful to feel your energy right through the Zoom bubble. Nice. Thank you. I feel like I just jumped into a beautiful sea of possibilities. Sea fueled with all of that DNA and lovely soup. The sea, which is the bag or container of everything that's ever been, which moves towards the catch or the lowest point. So in order to keep the conversation going, we've established a Discord channel called Water Community Power, which Matt will put in the chat bar. All of our readings, all of the PDFs will be there if you want to go through them. And also there'll be space if anybody wants to add. We'll add the chat bar there, so all of the things also that everybody's put in the chat bar can be sourced on there. But if you have any writing or thoughts or artworks that come up during the week that you want to add, we're doing this because we feel like a new non-hierarchical, non-excellence-based, process-based pedagogy needs to emerge, where inclusivity is what's collected and that everybody can dip in and open source and share all of their thoughts and materials. So that's something that we're exploring. So please check it out. And thank you, Izzy, for this absolutely exciting and stunning list of books you're going to be taking us through and readings.
Yeah, of course. Thank you all for being here. I'm very excited. So just a reminder, next week we'll be reading Author of the Acacia Seeds by Ursula Le Guin, and then a chapter essay called Sewing Worlds by Donna Haraway, where she discusses this short story as well as like the non-hierarchical symbiotic relationship between ants and acacia seeds, and the carrier bag theory of fiction. So kind of a follow-up, but a lead into more. I mean, the week after that, we'll read more about seeds and embodiment. So things will just kind of continue and we'll refresh and etc. But lovely to see you all tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Izzy.
Bye. Thank you all.
If anybody
Bye and thank you.
If anybody wants to stay on, Matt and I will take you through the Discord after everybody who wants to leave leaves. But if anybody wants to look at it, we'll do that.
Hi. I'm staying on because I am trying to figure out if the Discord is, so I'm a friend of Amy Walsh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, who I think invited me to the Discord, but I'm new to Discord and I'm not sure if the one she invited me to is the same one. Is it the same as this one? It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I'm on that one, then I'm all good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Okay, great. Well, thank you. This was
It's
a great
pleasure to virtually meet you. Thank you for your personal story.
Good to meet you, Lauren.
Yeah, you too.
Okay, it's late here, so I'm gonna sign off.
Good night. See you
Good
next week.
night. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, you want to screen share, Matt?
Yeah, sure. So this is the Discord. When you join, you will probably be in this introduce yourself, which this will be a channel where, as it says, you introduce yourself, say name, whatever you want to introduce yourself, why you're here, what you're looking forward to, what your projects or practice involves. And it's just a good way to just introduce yourself to the community. Over here, where my mouse is these are the channels, and you can scroll up and down to see the channels. The start here is kind of your basics. Like this is a nice little guide where you can see how Discord works if later on you're on and you want to kind of re-jog your memory. We have the announcement sections where we'll announce things like maybe the learning and mending. We'll announce, hey, the learning mending tonight. Could post a link there. We have some guidelines of just simple things about the Discord, different sections of the Discord to go to if you want to learn about certain things. These text channels category right here is just areas where you can chat about whatever the channel says. So this one says mycelium. So when you click on it, you'll find conversations, resources, just overall conversations about mycelium, pictures, just anything involving mycelium you'll find posted here. People will talk about it, share cool articles or books they've read. Some simple things to know is if you kind of are confused by, oh, there's so many channels here, this is a category, and when you click on it, it'll close all those channels. So you can kind of clean it up a little bit if you want to see the different categories. This discussions category is this a forum, and right here Farm Lab will have posts of our Farm Lab division where they will post projects that they're working on or working through. If you want to see certain posts in this forum, if you want to filter them out, you can go up here to the tags and click again, say like mycelium. You can click on mycelium, and all the posts that are labeled or tagged with mycelium will come up. So here I can click on one of our posts and how and why you compost. And sorry, I can't see the grid. Over here, you'll find, scroll up, the original post, what's your take on composting? And this you'll find a thread of conversation, people talking about their takes on composting or whatever the post is. To get back then, you can re-click the tag to get back to all the other posts, and that's the forum section here. I just created this category for learning and mending, and the Understories learning and mending. This is, we already have somebody commenting on it. I just posted the readings. I will upload the chat bar also into this area, and we also will post a recording, the video recording of the learning and mending, and that will all go here in this Understories learning and mending under the learning and mending category. So we also have voice channels, which is basically a 24/7 Zoom, and you can go in and join and talk with people. It's always open. As you see, I'm right now in it. I can go here, turn on my camera, and hello. So that is something that's always open and open to the community at all times. If, as you saw when I clicked in it, I joined, my little icon resonance here pops up and shows that I'm in the room. So if you see someone in the room, feel free to hop in, say hello, talk. As I said, it's always open, so it's always there when you want. Yeah, that's a nice quick walkthrough basically of the Discord. And as you see here, we have all these channels about just different topics. Feel free to add your own if there's a topic you think fits the Discord and fits the narrative. But yeah, I guess I can open it up to discussions or questions if anyone has them.
Thank you, Matt.
So, well, I'll just reveal myself to be totally technically ignorant on a lot of stuff.
Right now.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Can you guys hear me? I can't hear anybody.
Oh.
You might be in the Discord Zoom, Matt. That's why you're not hearing anybody.
I see the green popping up around people's screens, but I can't hear. Sorry, let me.
I'll pick up from him, Linda. What was your question? Because there's a few others of us who understand Discord well, so I can help you too.
Well, yeah, I'm just gonna put it all out there. I'm very a Luddite, very much a Luddite. So is Discord like Facebook or Instagram or TikTok? So we have to go there and open an account, and if it is, do we have to worry about like the privacy issues that arise using Facebook and all those other?
Well, that's why people use Discord, is that you don't. So
okay.
Discord is the emergence of a decentralized social media platform that nobody owns your content, and is small communities that are forming around niche subject areas. So it's a way that you can continue dialogues, but you're not like signing on for the oligarchs of the social media platforms. You're forming a new protocol, participating in a new protocol.
Okay.
You do need to get an account, but it's really easy. Doesn't cost anything. Nobody will own your content, and you can actually, a lot of people don't even use their names. So you can actually choose a handle, as it were. Like I use ultraviolet. So when I'm writing on Discord, but so, and the best thing to do is just join one, like join ours and play around with it. You can't hurt anything. You can't mess up really. And you can also
post it. It'll take me right there to set up the account and everything.
I think so. Will it, Matt? Yeah, got link.
Yeah, it will. I can hear now. Sorry about that. I just had to reconnect to my headphones. Yeah, if you don't have an account, it'll take you to the setup account. You'll set it up, and right when you set up your account, it should join you right into our Discord on the introduce yourself. And like Lauren said, I mean, feel free to post whatever you want. There is a way you can it's always editable or deletable, so nothing's permanent in a sense.
What is Metabolic's handle on Discord? I'm sorry, I may have missed that.
Oh, Metabolic doesn't have a handle. I personally do. So
okay, but when I go into Discord, what do I search for to find your channel?
Well, it's all everybody's channel, but if you go to learning and mending.
Learning and mending, okay.
That's this thing, then you'll see the readings that Matt just showed you. And then you can post comments on there. So yeah.
I just missed that really first one, how to get, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
And you can't look up the Discord. You have to go through the invite link I posted in the chat. That's the only way to get to the Discord.
But if you download the chat bar, you'll have it.
Okay.
You need a unique handle.
Could
I call myself Ultraviolet?
You can try. I don't know what happens if two people have the same one, but you could try. You could spell it with a space, like ultra-violet or ultraviolet 2.
Just a heads up, when I open it in Safari, it says that the invite link is not being accepted. I don't know if I'm trying to download it now to my computer, but does anyone else have issues?
Is it only?
It opened through Safari. I could try Chrome. I'll try Chrome.
When I opened that link, it popped up a window wanting me to subscribe to one of two plans. Is that useful? I guess if you're hosting your own channel or something, you might want that.
I subscribe just so I could upload files. The only real use for it is uploading files above a certain file length, but I wouldn't recommend. Just do the free version. There's no need to buy it.
Yeah, I just saw it says it's inviting me to join Water Community Power. That's the right place?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there a notification, like if we want to follow a special theme or something? Is there a notification, or do we have to plug in and, you know, every day and kind of get up to date to what's going on? How do we follow what's
You just go to the site. You don't get a notification in general. So it's just about going to the site and looking around. So
You'll see the chat section, the categories. If it's bolded in white, that means there's something you haven't read or seen there, which is kind of their notification system. You can turn public notifications on, but it just can be an overload with like a large community. You'll just be like ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
There's also a cell phone app for Discord, so you can download it to your cell phone and then also turn on notifications that way.
Is there an app for a PC?
Yeah, there is a desktop app, both for Windows and Mac.
Oh, I've got onto the Water Community Power Discord chapter or page or whatever, but where is it that I'm supposed to join Discord?
well, if you're on Discord.
Yeah.
What's that?
If you're on the Water Community Power page, that is the Discord. If you like have your account and you got onto it, then you're on it.
But I never had an account before.
And it added you onto our
I
channel.
got the page. I don't know. I'll play with it.
I'm gonna go, everybody. I have Zoom burnout.
See ya.
See you. Thank you. Bye.
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 I figured it out. Thank you very much, Matt, for your.
You're welcome. See you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
See you next week.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.